Okay, I think I killed my headphones there, so I'm gonna got my cord headphones here. Doesn't look as good, so let's continue on. One of the things we're thinking about with Shakespeare is Shakespeare's a great psychologist. I mean, he does a lot. One of the things that makes Shakespeare amazing, he does a lot of things well. He's very good at creating people that feel real, that have real psychologies. And one of the things, Freud sort of came up with this idea in, 1900, the sort of profound influences that mothers have on their children and the way that they shape them and that their traumas are caught up with their mother's, issues. And Freud really thought this was like, a centerpiece of, sort of modern psychology. But Shakespeare is already talking about this kind of thing, in Coriolanus 300 years earlier. Which is why I think it's really crucial to kind of study Volumina, because Shakespeare does a really interesting thing in having the mother, Coriolanus's mom, around in this play. It's just a fascinating thing to look at her and think about him and how he got to be the way that he got to be. All right, so let's take a look. On the top of 5, just picking up right where we left off. Because Volumina was very excited about all the blood that would be on him from the war, and Virgilia, his wife, doesn't want to think about him getting wounded, and she says, "Oh, his bloody brow, oh Jupiter, no blood." Volumina says, "Away, you fool! It more becomes a man than gilt his trophy." Right? Like it's better for a man to have blood on his face than to have gold on his trophy. And then you get this crazy line: "The breasts of Hecuba, when she did suckle Hector, looked not lovelier than Hector's forehead when it split forth blood at Grecian sword contemning." Hecuba is a mother from ancient Greece, and Hector is one of her great warrior son who was killed by Achilles. It's just like she says that a mother breastfeeding her son doesn't look as good as a son's head being split open in war. She's very, this is a fascinating image. Most mothers would not tell you, most people would say that a woman breastfeeding is a better thing to see than a dude with his head split open. But Volumina really admires violence and the raw power of sort of war. And so she's very excited by the idea of this kind of violence. And then her friend Valeria comes in. It's so annoying that these women have such similar names. It's hard to keep track of them. But Volumina is the mother, and Virgilia is the wife, and Valeria is her mom's friend. Volumina says he'll beat Aufidius's head below his knee and tread upon his neck. Like, she's so excited about this, she can't stop talking about it. And then they talk about Coriolanus' son. Now, Coriolanus' son does not have a large role to play, although this is a very interesting description of him. Volumina, right, she says, "How's the kid doing?" And the mom says, "Oh, I thank your ladyship, but he's doing well." And Volumina says he'd rather see the swords and hear a drum than look upon his schoolmaster. And that's a compliment from her, right? That she says this kid cares about military music and swords more than studying in school, and she admires that about him. And you can see this kind of thing where she's creating, I think she'd like to create a grandson just like Coriolanus. She wants another warrior child because this is what she cares about, and this is her new project. And then she tells this very disturbing story. I can see why they cut it out of the movie, because Coriolanus' son doesn't have a lot to do in the movie, but it's just a fascinating little moment. She says, "On my word, the father's son," meaning he's just like the Valeria says this is the mother's friend. "On my word, the father's son," right? He's just like his dad. He's just like Coriolanus. And then Valeria tells a story about the kid. "Oh, my troth, I looked upon him on Wednesday 30 minutes together. Has such a confirmed countenance, right? He's got such a good face. I watched him for like a 30 minutes playing. I saw him run after a gilded butterfly, and when he caught it, he let it go again, and after it again, and over he comes, and up again and catched it again. Or whether his fall enraged him, or I know not how 'twas, or whether his fall enraged him, or I'm messing up this. Or whether his fall enraged him, or how 'twas, he did set his teeth and tear it. I warrant how he mammocked it." And Coriolanus' mom says, "One of his father's moods." That is a pretty bonkers little story. But Valeria says, this is Coriolanus' mom's friend, says she saw Coriolanus' kid playing, catching a butterfly. And at first, it's like a sweet story because it's a gilt butterfly. It's very beautiful. It's got those beautiful colors. And the kid's chasing it. He catches it. He lets it go. He chases it. He catches it. He lets it go. And he's playing with bugs, which little kids love to do. But this kid, she says, I don't know if it's because he fell down or maybe just for whatever reason, who knows. He tore the butterfly apart with his teeth. He mimicked it, which is to rip something apart with your teeth like an animal. And Volumina is extremely happy to hear that her son isn't just playing with butterflies, but he is shredding them with his fangs. It's a very disturbing moment. First of all, it gives you a little, and again, it's just always one of his father's moods, just like his dad when he was a kid, right? He's got that same rage in him. Don't we like that? Don't we admire that? I feel like she has a tiny serial killer on her hands. This is a classic serial killer behavior, is the torture and murder of small animals, is one of those signals in early childhood that you may be dealing with someone who's going to grow up to become, going to hurt people. You start off hurting bugs, and then you move up to cats, and then you move into people, and you like hurting people. And her son, just Coriolanus' son, does not have a large role in this play, but you can see that he already is screwed up by being a member of this family, that he plays with butterflies and then shreds them apart with his teeth. It's a very upsetting kind of crazy moment. Okay, so I'm going to put this down for a second while I turn the page here. So you have to just bear with me for a second while I get this set up. But you would do the same thing if we were in class, because you'd have to wait for me to go to another part of the play by navigating there on the computer. I'll probably get it pretty quickly. Yeah, all right. This is just a little minor part. I don't think it's worth spending a ton of time with. But elsewhere in the play, Volumina, I think I may have talked about this during the movie. I feel like I drew attention to this quote. But Volumina, on the bottom of page 10, they're talking about Coriolanus's, the power that he has. And she says, these are the ushers of Marcius. Before him he carries noise, and behind him he leaves tears. Death, that dark spirit, in his nervy arm doth lie. Which being advanced declines, and then men die. It's a very excited description of Coriolanus, but she says he's got his sword. Again, this is the second time she describes him as being fundamentally like death. Her son is the god of death, and she couldn't be happier. That death is in his arm, and every time he lowers his arm, people die. She's just like an absolute terror. And then just on that same page, you get this detail that I've already mentioned, but is always worth looking at. This is during the sort of the military ceremony where he gets his new name, and she's very proud of him. And this is the same scene where Coriolanus calls his wife, "My gracious silence, hail." It's such an and then he says, "Would thou have laughed had I come coffined home that weeps to see me triumph?" Because she's crying because he's been wounded. But he's like, well, if you're going to cry that I came home safely, what, are you going to laugh if I came home dead? And then he talks about all the widows he's created and all the damage that he's done and sort of the destruction. But the idea that he calls his wife his gracious silence, it's such a peculiar nickname for somebody that you married. My gracious silence, hail. But it's interesting also that it's interesting that his mother is the way she is, and he has married somebody who is so different. His mother is a very assertive, talkative, powerful person, and the woman he's married is this kind of meek, quiet. She's so quiet, her nickname is Silence. And you can see in the movie there's really no place for her. They do a great job in the movie of his mother wants to take care of his wounds, and his wife opens the door, looks in, and just walks out without saying anything. And then she goes to the kids' room and looks at all the war stuff. She really doesn't like all this war stuff. And she's alienated in her own house. She has no role to play. Well, why? Because Coriolanus' mother is taking up all the space in the household. She's sort of the powerful feminine presence, and poor Virgilia, whose name, by the way, sounds like fragile. Poor Virgilia just has very little to do. She just doesn't have a major place in her kids, in her husband's life. It's interesting that I said kid, flip that up there. But the play, it's interesting. It's almost like Coriolanus had no boundaries with his mother, and he made sure to find a woman that wouldn't repeat his mother. But of course, his mother hasn't gone away. His mother is still a major presence in his life and is always going to be there. So it's not like he got away from her when he got married. She's still with him. So we'll pick this up, more Volumina material, in the next video.